Good morning.
Morning. Namaste.
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 This episode of Getting Juicy is brought to you by the Fart Counter app.
Actually,
The Fart Counter app counts your farts as you sleep.
oh my god, I must have had 1,000 or so overnight.
You can compete against your loved ones. Actually, okay, I'm totally kidding. Adriano got me with that though. We were lying in bed, I don't know, a couple weeks back, and he's like, so have you heard just before we go to bed, have you heard of this new app, like the Fart Counter app? And I was like, I just was finished reading and I was like going to go to sleep. I said, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, it counts your farts while you sleep. Like it like tells how gassy you are during the night. And I was like, whoa, like they're really getting quite sophisticated now. And it wasn't true.
I would have believed it for sure.
Me too.
When it comes to just the fact of sleeping as well, I mean, there's so many devices and technology now that count so many different metrics of your rest. So, I mean, your gas is inflammation. So, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't I count your inflammation?
I just had the weirdest deja vu moment. Maybe I actually mentioned this in a previous podcast episode. I'm not sure, but unless I dreamt that I told you about it. Anyway, weird
So
deja.
funny. Well, it's so funny. Well, I think definitely my farts have won overnight for sure.
It's a pretty good competition between Adriano and I. Depends on we both have like weird gut stuff sometimes, so it depends. But like what I said to you last night, since we stopped eating at like 7 o'clock or so, our sleeps are a bit better. Okay, yeah, it's been a bit stressful lately, but in like the sleeps have been better because you're not digesting while
Yeah.
you sleep or as you're, because like I said, I would have, before I go to bed, like a bowl of cereal or like I had to
Yeah.
have something just before I went to bed, which is
Yeah.
good. So anyway, since then, it's been a very um, clean air environment in the bedroom overnight because I never mind. I was going to go into way too much detail.
That's so funny. Well, no, because you're not farting at night and stuff. You're not digesting anything, as you said as well. So there you go.
And I'm sorry, like maybe TMI, but like waking each other up because of a smell, like it's not nice. Yeah.
That's just, so they have earplugs. They have nose plugs. There are as many ways to evolve beyond just waking up and slapping your partner because they did something that they didn't mean to do because they were in mid sleep.
Yeah. Or just stop eating at 7 o'clock. Anyway.
God, I definitely cannot do that. Not right now, but I know it is healthy for sure.
So this is how you do your hair in the morning. You kind of like just push up your hair. And this is how I do my hair in the morning.
Hey, it works. It works for both of us. Well, it definitely works for you.
Oh, I don't know. I got to do
I
anyway.
keep, well, eventually my hair is starting to bald. So eventually, in 15 years or 10 years, I'll be bald. So
Or you just have one curl like from the top of your head. You can do what I do. Just curl around your finger and just straight down the center of your forehead.
exactly. Or I can get a lace front. I can get a lace front.
What's that? That's a
Lace front weave.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know a family member that actually got was it plugs or like they like
Oh yeah.
the whole surgery done on to have hair again.
Oh really? Wow.
Yeah.
I could just rub, I don't know, stem cells or whatever over my skull, and maybe that'll help generate the original hair follicles.
Maybe. I don't know.
You never know. Never know.
Anyway,
God, have you been up for a while?
why does it seem like it?
I have no clue. I just got up.
No, I've been up since for like an hour and a half maybe.
How do you do that?
I go to bed really early though.
Yeah.
Earlier than you. Like I have to. It's interesting. I don't know if anyone else can also understand what I'm about to say, but like used to living when I was in Vancouver. okay, it's not a massive city, but it's the biggest city in British Columbia, and it's one of the bigger cities in Canada. And when I lived there, maybe it was just the stimulation and whatever going on, but I could never fall asleep before midnight. Never. And then moving to a smaller town, maybe it was just quieter. There's like less, well, I'm going to use that word again, but stimulation. There was like, we didn't feel like we were always on edge and like kind of competing against the rat race and all that stuff. And there's just something different going on in the brain. It was a little calmer in that sense, that now I can't stay awake past like 10:30. So it's so different. And my routine, as soon as we moved here, now I go to bed, like I go to bed by like 10:30 and I wake up just before 8:00. Whereas that was not my thing in Vancouver. So
you make a point though.
If I still lived in Vancouver, it would probably be different, I think.
Well, and also everyone around you, if the energy of the space has completely died down by that point too, then automatically you're going to feel that. You're going to pick up on that frequency. Yeah.
Or maybe it's just getting older. I don't know. I know Sydney's a little bit older than you. What are his habits?
Similar to mine, I guess, because of the fact that we live together.
Yeah, fair. Well,
he tends to fade a little bit before me, but not much before me. Sometimes I'm actually more conked out at 11 at night or at midnight, and he might need another half an hour or hour to calm down. But our sleep cycles seem to be pretty similar so far, at least.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
it helps for sure.
You're wearing a different shirt.
I am, yes. I'm wearing a shirt from the beautiful people at Warrior Addict in the UK, who are a men's-oriented yoga clothing performance brand, plant-based and very environmentally conscious. And they focus on mental health, actually, for men, and yoga as the engine behind it. So I'm one of their brand warriors, which is really awesome.
Cool. It's funny because I did not mean that to be like a plug, but I like the way.
No, I know you didn't.
It was a good segue anyway. So.
Totally.
Funny.
Totally. Gotta create meaningful relationships with your community. And,
absolutely.
Establish platforms to help amplify your voice that you want to help make difference. So if you can find anything that works for you, that I recommend that anyone listening.
That's a really good segue, actually, to something that we were going to talk about today, right?
It is, absolutely. We were going to talk about pride.
Yeah.
And I know that there's many different kind of elements and topics that go into that, of course. But I think that what me and Rachel want to hone in on, as I'm a member of the queer community, and Rachel is a strong ally and very strong support for me, for sure, and for anyone else in her life, including our friend Ashley, who we've had on the show, Dr. Ashley McInnes, who is part of the trans community. It's really nice to be able to talk about certain subjects that are meaningful, that have an impact that we can touch base on. So I'm excited to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess like, well, maybe to start the conversation right off the bat with what you were just mentioning about brands working with certain movements or certain organizations really mostly movements these days. So like mental health and like and LGBTQ plus and all those kinds of things. And what is their intention behind working with these organizations, with these movements? Is it a positive intention? Is it still have to do with, awareness for themselves? I mean, you can't help but know it's still a business, what they're doing. They're still trying to get, followers and people purchasing and buying their products and all those kinds of things. So,
exactly.
I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because we actually had a previous guest on, Brock, who was or is a member of the LGBTQ plus community. And actually, this is a bit of a segue, or not a segue, it's a bit of an offshoot of what I was just saying.
Yeah.
I want to say this correctly. and I want to educate myself, I always say LGBTQ plus, but I
Mhm.
know there's LGBTQ.
So yeah, that, and then usually it changes as more groups identify themselves as such. But
Of course.
and I know I'm not going to get the right order, even I, because it keeps changing. But LGBTQ, 2S, which is two spirited, and then QIA is what I think about. So queer, intersex, asexual. Some people put another Q in there, which means questioning. So questioning your sexuality, people that don't necessarily identify but aren't sure what they identify as. Um, but if you really wanted to add more, you could. But I would say that if you were to look at, and I could be wrong again, if you looked at a website, you looked at an organization, I think it would be politically correct or socially just if you had LGBTQ 2S IA or QQIA. That's kind of how I would look at it right now.
Yeah, and I wanted to just make that point because I want to get it correct, and I want, listeners or people to understand, what the reason is behind that, and also just more education. It's always
Yes.
education. And like you said, yeah, so LGBTQ to SIA plus
Hmm.
to be, and then there's, yeah, anyway. So
Yeah.
sorry. And then back to what we were talking about. I just wanted to clarify. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I know Brock was a pro hockey player in the men's league, and he was talking a lot about, being either brand ambassadors in major league sports,
Mhm.
and also specifically major league sports or companies that are investing in players, brands that want to bring awareness to certain organizations and movements, and how he was always really weary about just what their intention was behind it, and if they're doing enough actually,
Mhm.
when they
Right.
just kind of like plaster the flag on their branding and those kinds of things. So
Right. Well, so yeah, so based on that as well, I find that, again, I don't know the history, I don't know the studying, I don't know the research on all these different brands that and their initiatives or what their causes are, what they might do year round. But when it comes to June, for sure, and in our city at least, because of marketing and scheduling and ensuring that people can go across the provinces and whatnot to get to Pride in Canada, or even West Coast North America, like our Pride happens to fall quite late, kind of like the first weekend of August, and then with Pride events that in traditional times, meaning non-COVID times, events start mid to late June and go all the way to early September, with the bulk of them being in the middle of the summer. So you have, the Vancouver Pride Society and community. So they do a lot of those events, and there are other sponsors, but there are other products and brands, or even like corporations that will change their emblem, their logo to a rainbow style, but then they'll change it back once Pride has finished, which I mean, I understand. I do understand that, because there's a sense
mhm.
that there's a timeliness to it. But what I also find interesting is, without knowing the background or the interest of what, other than to generate funding for causes for some companies that are doing it, to appear inclusive, to appear like they are really non-judgmental, or that they whatever. I do wonder, like, how many of these companies actually are doing things for that group of people and communities year round, not just in a time of the year that might spotlight a group of people, but are these companies doing things in ethics, in morals, in their business practices, as well as the people that might be inclusive of their corporate culture, perhaps, or even their frontline? Are they part of the LGBTQ 2S QQIA plus community? Are they part of that, and are they heard? Are they recognized? Are they listened to? And I would assume so, right? I'm saying this very much hypothetically, but you do wonder though, because you sometimes will hear things where you see something, but when you learn about whatever it is, that maybe that's not exactly how they are on the inside. There's a public image of it, but are they actually practicing those social? Yeah, are they practicing those social ethics of inclusivity and diversity and education? Not just across people identify of different sexuality, but people of gender and people
Mhm.
of race, people of color, people of religion, people of creed. You know, like these are, it opens up a whole thing for me that I identify pride to be as, um, and it's great if it is for some people, but like it's not, I don't identify it as me removing my clothing and liberating in the streets. Like for me, that's, it's never been that way for me. I mean, yes, I did it when I was 17, but it's not that way for me now, being almost 30.
Yeah.
And I always, you know, every Pride I usually put up some kind of mention on social media saying like Pride is about, you know, honoring those that made way for our generations that came after to have the privileges of freedom and self-expression and loving who we choose to love without any risk or repercussion of ignorance or hatred from other people. And
Yeah.
that's and our ancestors, and not just in our community, in many different communities, but that community specifically, they fought for that. They fought for that very hard, and they
Sure.
risked their livelihood and their safety to be heard and accepted and tolerated. And depending on where we are in the world right now, those elements, those concepts are still reality. People are not even able to fight in some ways without potentially being killed or being threatened or being turned on by their families or their neighborhoods or their social. I mean, like it goes on and on and on. So it's a rabbit hole, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
And I think it depends on, like you said, it depends on where you live, because what I was familiar with with Pride Parade in Vancouver was, yes, what you just said, like a lot of people, which is great, expressing themselves, but there was a lot of like nudity and like, let's just, you know, and of people parade goers. So, you know, those of
Yes.
all kinds of, which is also great. But I went to a Pride Parade once, oh my gosh, I want to say, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe now, in Seattle. And I just happened to be there that weekend that the big parade was happening. And so we decided to go. And what I found so interesting was with the different vibe. So for them
Uh-huh.
at that point, it was still much more political, and it was still
Okay.
much, even what you're saying, like still fighting for rights. And it was a bit slightly more subdued, but more strong in those political views, and even the signage and what people were standing up for, and like
Mhm.
it was quite emotional in that respect. But I think that maybe, and I could be wrong because I'm not completely immersed in the community, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in Canada, especially in Vancouver, we're one of the more open and accepting and inclusive, perhaps, more major cities. So there's a huge difference there, you know, as to the intention behind some of these celebrations, and maybe the intentions behind companies that get behind some
Mhm.
of these things, right?
Well, yeah, and again, you make a point in terms of companies being regional or national or international, depending on who's in charge of those community departments or those regional marketing for those kinds of demographics based on the region that they're managing, right? And so I remember being in the Pride Parade or trying to be in the Pride Parade when I was a teenager, and I didn't have and you need to have like a float, you need to have be associated with a business, you need to have a name on a list. And I remember that, you know, the first year that I did the Pride Parade, I was affiliated with my youth group, so I was able to go. It wasn't like I wasn't permitted in the parade. And then I remember, I know I said this on an earlier episode quite a while ago, but I remember being in, it was at Thurlow and Davie, and I remember, no, Robson and Thurlow, sorry, Robson and Thurlow. and because everyone starts their floats around Robson Street and Burrard, and then it goes up down there to Denman and turns down to the beach. But I remember that I was trying to kind of blend in with Royal Bank Company. They had not a float, they had a banner that, like, 8 of their people there were holding, and they were marching. And so I kind of hid behind them. And then when the parade was supposed to start, and whoever was monitoring them was taking a head count, and they looked at me and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm so and so," and I was very, like, chest out, exerting dominance. And I was like, "I'm so and so. I have a right to march in the parade. I'm 17 years old, blah blah blah, and I don't have any affiliation, but I am permitted to be part of my community and so forth." She says, "Nope, get out. You're not welcome here. Get out. You're not part of our float. Get out."
What?
No, seriously.
Like in a very, in a very rude way.
She was very rude. She was very rude. Like, "Nope, I gotta keep everything online here. I've got a lot of things to do. I don't have time to deal with bullshit. Like, get out. You're not welcome. I don't have time for you." And I stood up a little bit, and she's like, "No, get out. You're not welcome here. You're not permitted to march. And please leave our section." And I remember being completely, I know I can look back and I can understand where they were coming from. I can understand all the technicalities behind it, and whether it was about, like, "Hey, like, you're not liable. We're responsible for you if something happened." Like, I'm sure there's many things, but as a teenager, you're not thinking about any of that. You're thinking, how dare does this person, who do they have the right to deny me the freedom to express and support who I am? And in an event that's actually for my kind of demographic, when they're probably all, assumingly, probably, and even more so if they were part of the queer community and identified as such, that they wouldn't be inclusive of someone that's younger than them who is part of that next generation, like, as an ally. So that's when I really realized, okay, it really, like, the light switch for me to think, okay, Pride is really not all it's cracked up to be, and it's really not a celebratory event for everybody, but an opportunity for corporations to basically say, "We're allies of your people, but we really just want their money," because this is an opportunity for them to see that they have a place they feel they belong and they call home.
Yeah, and
I've never forgotten that.
oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, but even to be, to communicate with someone in a human way, that wasn't even the way that they communicated with you. It doesn't matter who you are, where anyway. That's really unfortunate. And that's, and I guess, like, that is where, depending on where you are in the world, maybe that's what Pride has started to become. It's more of this, "Hey, look at me. I do support, X, Y, and Z. So, I'm a good company," or I support mental health, and, like, it's almost like, well, we have to support these things because and that's a real big extreme. I don't believe that. I would hope that the majority of businesses are not like that.
I would hope not, and I'm not the right person. I can flat out say I'm not the right person to make assumption or even thoughtful evaluation of what companies are doing. I have no right with that, and I don't have any knowledge behind it, but I can certainly share from the few experiences that I've had as a spectator and as a participant in certain queer events, or in terms of understanding what I'm seeing in messaging, or like the messaging through social media, or even in person, like print marketing, signage, graphic design, in terms of, like, what companies are trying to portray. It's something that I feel I don't understand. I can't fully wrap my mind around what the intention behind it is, outside of, selfish capital gain.
Do you think after so many years, certain things that really meant something, and, as time goes by, they kind of lose that initial real meaning, or the feeling that came about to actually stand up for something, and to have these, I mean, at first, I don't even think it was like necessarily like a freedom, happy celebration, because there was so much um, animosity and so much angst against the community that it was a frightening thing at that time to stand up for yourself. Now it's just like it's well, especially where we live. I mean, I just point out it again, because like I said, when the difference between going to Pride in Canada and Vancouver, and I know Seattle is so close to us, and it's still not like some of the other places in the world, but just the differences that I felt between one celebration and parade to the other, where people were still fighting for certain rights or certain laws passed at that point, is a big difference.
It is a big difference. But you know what I remember that was interesting is in 2017 when I was in Europe, completely by chance, I was in Edinburgh. And in the few days I was in Edinburgh, I actually was there for Edinburgh Pride. So I actually saw in Scotland, like I was able to see a major city in Scotland, see how they celebrated it and how genuine and pure and how communal it was. It was a smaller city for one. It was a different part of the world. But to see so many people in union and in celebration and in true pride, it was so refreshing to see that in a smaller community, in a foreign country and city compared to where I'm from. So I got to see the parade. I got to see the daily events of the town and what businesses were doing what. I was able to see at night kind of like people going to events. And that was really cool. And then I also had the privilege of seeing the London and Barcelona. So I didn't see anything really there aside like marketing and stuff. And again, like pride theme. But when I went to San Sebastian in Basque in the coast, I somehow stumbled upon their pride parade as well. And their pride parade was no less than 200 people marching through the streets with flags and cheering and signs that in Spanish or French that I couldn't read. But it was just so interesting that how divine and timing for me to be able to witness pride in two cities that are very much on the smaller end, especially San Sebastian. It's a coast town basically, and to see that, and I took videos of it too. I have them somewhere on my phone.
Did it feel more like raw and more like less flashy probably?
Completely. There was no corporate floats. There was no like spectator booths. There was no like tents and shit. It was just people trying their best to be representing who they are and standing up for what they believe is right.
Yeah.
That's all it was, and that's how it started too in Vancouver. It was, I don't remember the year, but it was started in the West End. It lasted for one block. It was from a group of activists and people and they called it like the Human Rights Equality March or something like that, or Gay Rights Equality March, and that was the start of our Pride in Vancouver, and it grew longer and longer and longer, and eventually from there it developed into what it is today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, this is making me think of, and it's a little bit of switching gears slightly, but just thinking about words and terminology, ideas and things that tend to lose their meaning after time, become popular, and then the real like importance behind them and people that actually suffer from or are find these things challenging in their lives, it kind of loses their meaning. It's not as important anymore. So for example, I was talking to Adriano about the word trauma and how trauma, like they're like and PTSD and even mental health, and like certain words have become like, I mean, I hate to use this terminology, buzzwords. They become these kind of, and for like, they kind of almost, because everyone seems to be using them these days, especially trauma, and like everyone's had trauma in their life, like it just to varying degrees. And I understand that, but the real seriousness maybe of it for some people, it tends to kind of soften it and I just feel like it's almost losing its meaning, like certain words, even in social media. And it's kind of like, even for myself, like when I talk about anxiety or those types of things, somewhere deep inside of me is like, oh, well, you're Rachel. Like, it's just, yeah, you're just another person that experiences it because everyone's talking about it now, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's such a, now I'm like backtracking because I want people to talk about it. That's not what I mean.
No, for sure. No, but in terms of its importance, it's like the more that something is, how do you say it? The more that something is saturated and broadcasted, then it starts to feel a little bit more mainstream instead of it being something that might draw people's attention that's targeted to those that might also be in a similar situation.
Yes. And is it just becoming popular with losing its meaning just because people know that it's like something that, again, people are really talking about right now, and it's a hot topic, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, or again, what's someone's intention behind it? Is because it's a hot topic right now, so it's like, I got to talk about it and find something that I in my life that has been traumatic, so that I can get the followers and be popular on social media, because that's what's hot right now, and then it starts to lose the real essence behind it and the real importance behind talking about it. So there's such a fine, because like I said, like, I'm glad that it's, and I still post about it. Like, don't get me wrong. I just, like, when does it become too much? And then it's almost like you just accept it and not get stronger and move forward.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right.
I don't know. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying though. A lot of people come and talk about, I've been through this, I've been through that, and it becomes really saturated with a lot of similar info and dialogue from a lot of different sources. And so what I find interesting is that when you talk about trauma, it's one of those things that is so personal to so many people. Mm-hmm. So what one person's trauma could be may be different from someone else's. And then what I also wonder about, and again, I write about this a lot on my social media, and I think about when I'm writing and sharing and oversharing information, I do think about the people that might read it and the judgments that might come from those people, or the misinterpretations that might come from those people, though that's really their concern, not my concern, because I'm just being truthful and opening about what I want to share and expose to the public. But these things come up, though. They do. And I agree. I'm glad people are talking about it more. But I hope people understand that when they are talking about these things, that it's not lighthearted. It's something that you need to understand, that you are exposing something that you need to be really clear in how you're saying it, and be very intentional about why you're sharing that information.
Yeah.
No matter how open or how uncensored it is, people can understand an intention. Even if they don't know they are and understanding it, people pick up on intention from writing.
Oh, yeah. And I think that just kind of goes back to also what we talked about, excuse me, in a previous, just got a frog in my throat.
You get a fart in your throat?
Not a fart in my throat. Ugh. He just walked by, he's like, what the heck are you guys talking about? No, we talked about another episode about selling things like, I don't know, like, can you read my mind, Hiiro? Selling things like mindfulness or those types of things.
Mindfulness as sexiness.
Yeah, like those. And I think that's also what I mean about losing the meaning and trying to talk about something that is quite serious to a lot of people and kind of making light of it and making how do you, but again, it's like, it's a business. Well, how do you sell that? How do you get that in front of people's, eyes? It's by making it a bit flashier so that people gets their attention, which on one side I get, because then that topic becomes something that people actually are, something that's important that people are actually paying attention to. So that's great. Right. More awareness, the better.
Mm-hmm. But it's true.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But also I think about, again, it's not the same comparison, but one thing I do think about is how people can view, because it is, but people can utilize trauma as a source of vulnerability. And I think that's something that just came out of thin air, that literally just came into my brain. I'm like, so people can use their traumas or spotlight their stories and things they've been through as a way of, which they are, expressing vulnerability as a way to connect to other people, to generate empathy and compassion.
It's funny when you said that, because that's a positive thing, right?
It is a positive thing.
It's funny when you said that, something else I thought about was using it as playing the victim to get more attention.
That's what I was actually getting at.
Right. Okay. So
yeah. So we're on the same page.
Right. So once and that's not healthy. So
no, you're feeding your own misery.
But social media is about attention. And it is.
I know.
That's why it's so hard to be vulnerable and to quote unquote sell mental health on social media platforms. It's so difficult because and I'll be totally transparent when I do on my personal channel talk about, certain challenges that maybe I've been facing on a daily basis or something like that. And I see it, I'm like, oh, great. Like, this many people have liked it. It makes me feel good.
I know.
So it's just, it's so, but I'm glad that we can talk about these things. And that's what's
me too.
Better than being completely blinded by it and going down that rabbit hole, like you said, of, of playing into that victim mentality and then getting attention for it.
Yeah. Well, I remember putting up something about my body weight and my dysmorphia like a few months ago and just seeing the attention that it received. And that wasn't the point, but seeing the attention it received more than anything that I had posted in quite a long time. And I was just thinking, holy shit, right? The impact it can have on people and the impact it can potentially have for people to realize to look at the body in a way that normally they might not think the body is perceived to be as. But even still, though, the attention that it received, it shocked me, and I got into the idea of like, oh, how many more people saw it? How many more people that are in my network that might be acknowledging that it's something that it meant something to them, right? And then you start to get into that very fine line of, are you feeding your own ego or are you trying to make a point behind what you're saying? And that's always going to be a sliding scale for anybody who uses social media, and that is trying to utilize their voice to amplify discussion and shift in how people think and operate with their lives. And it's non-stop.
No, and there's always going to be a bit of both because, as humans, we are social creatures and we do crave that attention from, a lot of the time it's from a partner. It has been for, centuries about like that one partner, but now it's about society and it's about, fitting in, and that will and then back to inclusivity.
Yeah.
I do think everybody deserves that. But yeah, every day I have like questions about social media and like this is another buzzword, toxic, how toxic it can be.
Yeah.
It's just about like, it's almost like being, because you are spotlighting yourself. It's almost like being an actor or something like that. You're on camera, so to speak. You're putting yourself out there. It's about staying humble and about staying grounded.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Social media is become like everybody's personal way of becoming a star.
Well, yeah, it's your own brand and something you have control over doing.
Yeah.
It's a game that you can start whenever you want. You can dictate and impact the reaction of the audience. If you know how to continue to grow an algorithm and a brand or an exposure, you have the ability to do that. So it just brings such a dialogue to anybody at any age. You could have a 7-year-old that has millions of followers and they're making tons of money just based off of stuff that they don't even know what the hell money is yet. I mean, it's never ending.
And actually, this is interesting. I had a friend tell me that they have stopped following people who on their own personal channels have started to plug their businesses or market things because they're trying to stay grassroots with social media as a platform for connecting with friends and, you know, people in society, and just talking about their own lives. And they're only, you know, as soon as their friends who they are, you know, very involved within their lives, as soon as they start to talk about, you know, marketing of something, then they stop following them. And if they'll follow their business maybe, but as soon as they personally start to do that. And that was just interesting, because I'm like, well, but on the flip side, it's like my business and what I'm marketing, especially when it comes to a podcast, because our podcast is okay. And in a sense, I guess it is business, but it is very personal, and it is my life. So that's where, you know, I think a lot of us these days are having, just because of social media. I do think of social media as a marketing platform, though, as well.
It is so. It is so. And if you want to have social media as a non-marketing platform, then that's great. But at the same point in time, use a platform that might be less corporate and less established, and that might be more grassroots, which these engines were initially, until they were sold out for billions of dollars. So there will always be some new platform coming to try and combat what those elements are that the person you're referring to was talking about it. And that's okay. That's totally fine. It's one reason why I stopped using Facebook, because even though Instagram now is under the same family of platforms, I still find it's easier to skip over Instagram advertisements and feeds and stuff, for whatever reason, more than Facebook. I find Facebook, it's like you see so much advertisement now, you see so much paid sponsorship, and you do on Instagram too, but on Facebook, I find it was so overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's so much stimulation that was happening on Facebook, and I was just like, I don't want all this in my face anymore. So getting rid of Facebook for me was really a positive thing.
But like, just like anything really, like, and this is the whole theme really of going back to the intention to begin with of anything, and then how it evolves and how it ends up losing that initial grassroots intention. And I think, and that's the same with social media. Like, it was intended as a way for people to connect as friends, mostly, especially with Facebook. And you know what, at any platform that comes out, I hate to say it, but like, I don't really see any platform staying as a grassroots type thing. There always will be marketing involved in some sense.
There always will be.
It is. And that goes even to, which I've been in a relationship for so long now, but like dating apps. I mean, so for example, like, and I don't know what kind of marketing happens on dating apps, and that's not really my point. I guess it's more like, initially what they start off as is like maybe like hookups, and then because of the way humans are, just wanting that deeper connection, like not Grinder, what the heck is the other one? Tinder, like Tinder, like it was kind of like this hookup app, and then as soon as you realize people will, okay, that's okay for now, but eventually it turned into like a bit more of a serious dating app, right? And I know friends I'm married after meeting their partners on Tinder now, where when it first came out, like, you probably never would have, it was weird to think of that, perhaps. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. And because Tinder was born out of Grindr for the heterosexual community initially, one thing that I noticed, although the gay community has lots of different dating apps and even targeted to their own so-called niche or tribe, there's one for bears, people that identify as more burly or husky or not as much in the community. There are apps for, my point is that there's always something new and developed, but the ones that I know of that people are using a lot are Grindr, Scruff.
Scruff? What's Scruff?
So Scruff is what I was basically just describing. It's basically like Grindr, but primarily for people that are in the bear community, that identify with those kinds of people, those kinds of interests, those kinds of hobbies, and and that, but it can be used for hooking up, it can be used for dating, it can be used for matching. It's a full platform that I have used, even though I don't necessarily identify as part of the bear community. I didn't really know what community I identified with, so I wanted to have the connection to whatever was out there. But anyway, I find, and they could be changing all the time, but I find that Grindr like I met my last partner off of, me and him dated for just over a year, and that was really great. But I find Grinder is definitely for hookups for sure, and unsolicited photo sharing and things like that, because you don't have any privacy in that way, and it's kind of funny to see how desperate people are to showcase their body to you,
Mm,
or parts of their body to you, and you didn't even ask for it. And
really?
all the time, all the time, and it's kind of brilliant because you're not asking for anything and you're receiving tons, and it's like, holy crap, like a whole gallery that you can be saved on your phone, and people don't even know what the hell that they're sending you. Like, it's very important information that people are sending you that they're just giving to you. But I find that Tinder, once it became more flooded with a balanced population, not just a heterosexual population, I found that on Tinder that a lot of queer men use it for sure to hook up. But I find because we have more platforms, I guess is a good way of putting it. Like if you had Grinder for straight people, I'm sorry, hell would break loose. But if you have, but that's why Tinder is more like you have to match with someone. You have to have some kind of photograph up. You have to have some kind of bio. There's a little bit more traditional like information required. And Grinder, you could just have barely anything and just not even a photograph and just send shit. You could spam and get blocked, of course, but like you can send stuff. I find Tinder for queer people has a higher likelihood of it being more serious sometimes, or the people that think that they want something more serious, because there are other apps that are more casual. So Grinder is very casual,
Yeah.
and Tinder is still very casual, but has the likelihood of potentially matching with, if people are looking for the same thing and they match, there's a higher likelihood of some percentages that they could end up dating or marrying or being in a relationship, even if it doesn't last.
Okay, this is a really interesting point you brought up about Grinder, because I'm just assuming here that it's more predominantly for gay men.
Yes,
Okay. So,
it's not aimed at any. I mean, there could be heterosexual men that are hopefully not trying to cause harm to other queer people, but maybe that are in denial or in a closet, and so they're secretly on there identifying as straight, even if they're not. I mean, there's so many scenarios.
right, but is it open to trans? Is it open to, or is it okay?
It
Okay.
is. It is. Yeah. No, Grinder is definitely open to trans men for sure. There's a lot of. I've seen a lot of people that are, let's say, I'm openly trans or in transitioning, interested in men, and they'll say what they're looking for.
Because the point that you just said, like if it was more of a heterosexual app that was like Grinder, imagine the sexual harassment,
Yeah.
lawsuits and shit against people, like, because basically what you're saying is that anyone could just send you really like dick pics whenever they want,
Yep.
unsolicited, and it's
Yeah. Dick pics, whole pics, whatever. Yeah.
and it's okay.
Hmm.
Why why is that? Like that's like, to it doesn't matter what you identify as, or that could be seen as sexual harassment. So
Oh, for sure.
was like on an app where it was heterosexual, like a male, unsolicited, doing that to a natal female woman. That would be like
Yeah.
how society,
Yeah.
how society works that way. I don't want an answer. It's more just like a interesting, like, food for thought.
Yep.
We still live in that. Well, that just, yeah. I mean, it's interesting.
Well, I'm just gonna say it. Like, no matter how chivalrous, genuine, or proper men or male-identifying people might be, let's just say, for the sake of it, cisgendered men that are more primal, men are pigs, and we are sexual beings, as women are too, but so differently wired from what my experience has been. Not that I've dated women, I should clarify that,
Yeah.
but the psychology of what men identify as sex is such a primal mechanism. For women, it's more mating and wanting to have that family, that sense of like partner providing. And for men, there is that part too. But I find in men, there can also be a separate kind of part of their brain that isn't as evolved, where it's literally, I want to fuck. Like, I want to get laid.
Yeah.
Plant my seed in something, and I don't care what it is, how it's done, it needs to happen now at my choice, on my time, on my schedule.
Yeah.
And so I find that the women can definitely and do definitely have the same biological responses and want the same craving. And women in my life that have had zero or overly, even more than me. I do find when it comes to the whole concept of a socialized dating app on your phone, and you look about instant gratification, men, I think, are much more willing to participate and engage in such acts of connection and exchange
Yeah.
on a moment's notice and not have anything other than the primal desire to get off. And so that's where Grinder, as one main app and of many apps, has been very successful in making it also safer in some ways. Not necessarily safer, but in some ways safer for men to discreetly communicate to each other and connect with another without the potential harm of being abused, harassed, or even killed in a public setting like a club or an alleyway or something where it, it does happen still today, and I'm sure it happened a lot more in the past. So in some ways, these apps are actually creating a safety net for communities that are at risk of being physically harmed or hurt, attacked, or judged or discriminated against. So there is also kind of a positive note to say with these platforms that people have created to create inclusivity and safety, but then more distance, less social interaction, and potentially less social skills, because people are playing the persona on a screen instead of being in person one-to-one, and you see them regardless of what state they're in. You don't see them in person, especially during COVID. You don't see them in person usually. It's through a camera, or you take a risk and you go on a date with someone and you focus on that one person and hope it works out. Right?
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack there.
Oh my God, for sure. My brain just was firing on all cylinders, like thinking about all these different things. I mean, I think at the crux of it, it was more just the observation of really just biologically. And when you really get down to the nitty gritty of it, the real differences between, I don't want to say the wrong words, but like,
right.
I guess like a natal, could you say that, natal male and a natal female?
Yeah.
But then the real there. Actually, and that just brings up, it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast with one of Joe Rogan's podcasts with a woman who teaches, she teaches sexual, like gender and sexuality courses at Harvard University, and she does a lot of and things like that. And she was just talking about how she actually hates the word cisgender. Mm-hmm. She prefer to use like, natal this, natal that. And I wonder, I don't really know exactly what that is, or where did cisgender, where did that terminology come from?
I'm not sure. I haven't researched or studied it.
Just because you said it's just something I just listened to recently. Mm-hmm. I don't even know where cisgender. Yeah. I was just trying to figure out like what the basis of that word is, but I can't seem to find it that quickly.
Right.
Latin. Of course, it's Latin. On the side of. Okay. Right. Oh, it's okay. So it's essentially just means on the side of, so you can say cisgender female, cisgender male on the side of that. Mm-hmm. But I understand, but that's kind of confusing.
So it is confusing because what does that even mean? Where's the parameter for that term?
Exactly. So I understand how when you say natal, like this is the birth of a female, like so-called born female. So just say natal this or natal that might be a little bit more specific. I'm not sure.
For sure. It could be.
I love that I just looked up this. This is Google for you. Okay. And this is not due to because of what I've been searching. I just have to preempt this. When I cisgender meaning, some of the other things that came up is tucking dangerous?
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I didn't Google that.
Oh, wow.
Maybe it is after a while. I'm not sure. Yeah. Anyway.
That is funny. That's funny.
Google. Well, I can't believe we've been talking about all this stuff for like an hour now.
I know, it's amazing.
Is there anything else you want to add to our conversation before we kind of wrap it up?
I think just in terms of any kind of business, whatever the business is, whatever you're representing, and I take accountability for this as well. I think it's really important to recognize that whatever you're representing and being an advocate for, that you're doing it year round. You're doing it as a consistent way of living and ethics of your business and your practice. And even if you may be doing it, to also be vocal or communicative about it. And not shoving it in people's faces, but just little acts of service, little acts of communication, or acts of whatever it might show to be, that if you are representing and supporting something and it's genuine, whether if it's for a month of the year, a day of the year, I challenge anybody to continue doing the work and to showcasing it through whatever initiatives that resonate with their company, their brand identity, or their brand mission, their brand vision. And that's coming from a place of just, if you want to make a difference year round, you want to make a difference long term, that there's more that you can do more, right? And even if it's a genuine act of service, continue doing it. Don't save it for a month of the year or a certain celebration of the year. Like, continue doing it. Because it makes a difference, and thank you for doing it in the first place. Like, how can you continue doing that and fighting for the rights of other people?
Well, and that just, and I just want to say too, like you said in the beginning of our conversation, how, I am an ally, and I do feel that way, but it's kind of like, I also feel like I could be doing more, or what can I do to actually, physically actually do something to be an ally. So it's kind of like with a business, you can say you're an ally, which is the first step. It's awesome. But then what else can you do? And I'm always thinking about those things, and I'm hoping that maybe this platform is a part of that. And I guess we don't give ourselves credit for that necessarily, because it sometimes feels like we're just talking because this is genuinely who we are. But hopefully it does help somebody out there. But yeah, you can, I guess my point is, you can say you are something. You can say you stand by mental health, or behind, certain communities or movements, or even Black Lives Matter, like those kinds of things, which is the first step, which is great. Or like the kids they found buried in Kamloops in the residential schools in British Columbia, and
Right.
What's the next step, right? And even like Donovan on our show recently, Mahoney talked about that as well. Like, the people that it's almost like the people that haven't necessarily, when he brought this point up, this is the last thing I'll say, is like people that haven't been traumatized. I'll use that word because it truly is, whom have been traumatized, like himself, his self in his, with his, where he's from, being Indigenous. It's hard sometimes for those people to find the strength to move on. Like, it's the people that are more clear-minded, that haven't had that trauma, that they're not dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, that need to help others.
Yep.
So,
for sure.
because sometimes when you're in the thick of it, it's not as, sometimes as you would think, well, it's the people that, that are actually dealing with it, that those are the people that need to stand up for themselves. But
Right.
sometimes they can't.
Nope. Sometimes they can't at all.
Need our help. And so what can we do?
Well, and also, again, it's like people are so tired of fighting, and this is what Nira Aurora said. They are so tired of continuously fighting. What they need for us to do is to amplify and to give the voice for their voices that are not heard, their voices that they're speaking, to be transmitted to those people that actually will listen to us. So that way those people actually get the recognition that they have worked for, that we want them to have, without any ulterior motive and without any credit. We're just simply a messenger for some people, for someone that shouldn't need to have a messenger, but unfortunately might still need that to get heard, to get spotlighted.
Yeah, absolutely. And to quote Nira talking about being a racism interrupter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep, exactly. So there you go.
Yeah, there you
Just
Well,
stay strong.
make sure to download that fart counter app before you go.
Please do. Yeah, I know. I'm sponsored by Getting Juicy.
Well, getting juicy sponsored by the fart counter app. Download the app. Whoever's out there, maybe you want to create this app.
Yep.
Make sure you give us credit because this is all recorded, so it's our idea. We get the rights to this.
We definitely do. We do. And at FC app.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
All right.
Lots of love, everybody.
Take care. Thanks for tuning in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe. Love you. Bye.